Here are the horoscopes for the week of the 11th to the 17th of May 2015. Now obviously we're coming out of a very potent, secretive and revealing full moon in Scorpio last weekend, and we're in the waning phase of the moon now, heading towards dark moon at this weekend. So while the moon's waning, it's a chance to sum up everything that's come up. It's a chance to attend to detail and to make those changes. So whatever came up at the full moon in Scorpio, in a way the dust is still settling, because that's a very, very intense one. We were on the axis there of Taurus and Scorpio, and where Taurus is all about life and is celebration and enjoyment of nature, Scorpio is all about letting go, releasing, dying to the old and being reborn to the new. So that full moon in Scorpio, with Mercury retrograde, with Saturn and Pluto retrograde, it was a very interesting time. Things came up from behind the scenes, but only what needed attention. So the dust is settling on that. Like I say, we're coming out of that phase, but it's one of the most powerful moons of the year. So if you had an interesting bank holiday weekend, or if it wasn't a bank holiday, if you just had an interesting full moon weekend, then you should be able to start to see what the meaning of the message was behind that. Now when I talk about Mercury being retrograde, it's not retrograde yet, it's just that we've entered the phase. So when we work with a retrograde phase, we have a forward motion which goes over the degrees that it's going to go back to, and that raises awareness of certain issues. And then when Mercury turns retrograde, which this time will be on the 19th, so next week, we get a couple of weeks' chance to go back and to make adjustments. And then when it turns direct again, and this time that will be on the 12th of June, we have another forward motion all the way through to the 28th of June, where we can see that what came up has been recalibrated and adjusted, and now we're better off. So this is the third of a series of Mercury retrogrades in the air signs. So back in last October, November, we had Mercury retrograde in Libra and a little bit of Scorpio, and that was calling us to rebalance, but to rebalance the way that we think in polaric terms, the way that we think about our masculine and feminine and our inner and outer self and our relationships. Then in January, February, we had a Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, which was really rebellious and revolutionary, so that changed the way that we think about life itself. And we've made those changes since, so we should be living in a different, more sovereign way. And now we have the Mercury retrograde in Gemini. So that's all about how our mind manifests our reality. What we're thinking becomes our words, becomes our actions, becomes our reality, and how we're creating our world. So this phase is going to be very much about monitoring the mind, about mindfulness, about being aware of that inner chatter and aware of restricted or limited thoughts, and where we're actually creating more difficulty for ourselves by our very beliefs and our very words and actions, and where we can go in and check what that inner narrative is and maybe make some changes. So that's all coming up now. But to add to that, we have Mars going into Gemini on Tuesday. So Mercury retrograde phase begun already in Gemini, and then Mars will be adding to that by Wednesday. But just before that, we have Mars leaving Taurus. And this is a very interesting phase. Mars won't be back in Taurus for another 2 years, and Taurus is all about the heart centre, and Mars is all about our dynamics, where we actually take our soul, our sun, life force energy, and direct it. So we have an opportunity at the beginning of this week to really anchor ourselves in the heart, to really centre ourselves, and to really know where home is, so that as Mars goes on its next 2-year cycle, we've always got that place to come back to. And this is what the Wizard of Oz is about, centering yourself in the Emerald City. There's no place like home, but with a click of your heels you can go back there at any time. So we're off on the yellow brick road, as it were, but we can always return to that Emerald City, to that heart centre, if we can anchor everything that the beautiful Taurian sun phase has brought in, with Mars there as well, and some of the other planets recently passed through. We can really find that centre, find that place where we feel loved and secure, because many relationship readings, people are looking for love and security, but this is very much what we need to find in ourselves first, rather than just expecting from other people. So Monday, Tuesday, Mars leaving Taurus, a final chance to just anchor that energy, to know where home is, and to value ourselves, so that as we go on the next cycle with all of the other things that are going on, we've always got that place to return to, that sanctuary of love, nourishment and security. But when Mars goes into Gemini, obviously the pace is going to pick up. Gemini is a very, very quick sign, with the Mercury retrograde phase in effect as well, and lots of other retrogrades, like I say, Pluto and Saturn are both retrograde as well. Then we've got a chance to really go in and do some of this mind work. So maybe keep a diary this week, maybe have a look at whenever you're not feeling great, what are you thinking, and just monitor those thoughts. Check whether the base beliefs behind them are even true in the first place, and what you're creating from those thoughts, because we have the opportunity to change our mind at any time. And what I find is really useful for this, with Gemini, it's the twins, it's the two polar opposites that are on the same scale. And we live in a very physical, mental, psychological world, so most people, if they have what they would perceive as a problem, would try and think themselves out of that problem. But sometimes it's worth just jumping to try on the other shoe, the shoe on the other foot. So if you're feeling anxiety, can you jump to a sense of relaxation and ease? Can you just see what the other end of that scale is, so that you know where it is that you're heading towards, or at least what your options are? So this is a really interesting exercise to do when energy is in Gemini, is to actually see where you are on the scale of whatever emotion it is that you're feeling, and maybe even find the opposite end of that scale and try that on for size. And then you can actually choose to move that slider. So that's the universal law of polarity. Once we realize it's all connected and it's all one, then we have a chance to readjust ourselves on the scale according to whatever it is that we want to feel. And this isn't about ignoring any problems, this is just about getting ourselves out of the mental matrix for long enough to see what the range is and what the options are. So we always do need to go in and look at what's going on, and with all of this retrograde action, this is the time to do that. But like I say, most memories are perception of what happened rather than what really happened. And if you went and revisited whatever it is that you've built a story around, you may find that things were slightly different back then, and you've managed to create a whole story based on something that wasn't that way in the first place. So with Mars in Gemini and the Mercury retrograde phase coming up, is it about perceived memory? Is it about the way that we think about our memories, rather than what actually happened and what we're taking to be truth and building upon? So when we look at the Norse god Odin, he had two ravens, Hugin and Munin. Hugin means thought and Munin means memory in basic terms. And this was showing that the ancients knew that thought and memory existed in fields outside of the body, because the ravens used to fly off and then report back to Odin. And Odin is a god very much connected with, say, Mercury, that Wednesday, Woden's day, Odin's day, Wednesday. It's that mercurial day. Mercredi is the French equivalent, which is to do with our thoughts and our memories, and how we actually draw down from and contribute to the collective fields outside of our body. So this is really the big study that's coming up for us in the next couple of weeks. If you realise that you don't even know what you're going to think next, then how can you really be worrying into the future about what's going to happen, when what's actually happening now is what's creating the future? So this is quite a big theme, but just wanted to introduce that there. You look at the symbol of Mercury with the crescent on top. Those are like two antennae. One is thought, one is memory, the two ravens flying off and calling back. So we're looking here at the fact that thought and memory are connected. So once we realise this, then we can say, well, okay, is it the perception and the thought of the memory that I'm dealing with? Is the memory actually remembered properly in the first place? So we have a couple of weeks now with all of this Gemini energy, the twins, trying to find the fusion in the middle. That's what the Lovers card is about, dedicated to the sign of Gemini. The two opposites meeting in the middle, or at least us having the power to find some sense of middle balance. So that's Mars in Gemini coming up from Tuesday onwards for a good few weeks, maybe 6 to 8 weeks, I believe. With the retrograde phase as well, those two are running side by side. As we get towards the end of the week, we're heading towards a new moon, but before we get there we've got the dark moon. So by the weekend we get the dark moon. And many people work with the full moon. You may go to a gong bath or a meditation, or just relax and ritualize that personally yourself. And some people work with the new moon, setting new intentions, but many people forget the dark moon as an option. So the dark moon comes along 2 to 3 days before the new moon, and it's a chance to release. It's a chance to not have to feel great, not have to go out and be sociable and happy, but to actually feel that slight sense of hollowness or emptiness or sadness, or the need to just let go of a phase before we step forward and make those new moon intentions. So we have the new moon in Taurus coming in on the 18th, that's next Monday, but just before that, before we skip ahead, why not take some time to just release anything that's come up in the last month? And this could be a lot of the issues that have been raised both by the strong full moon in Scorpio, bringing up that opposite, or by the initial beginning period of this Mercury retrograde, which is bringing things to awareness. So when we work with the moon cycles, we can actually ritualize 3 different dates per month. We can actually do the right thing at the right time, so that we're not constantly calling in, we're not constantly going round in a whirlpool of emotions, but we're letting go of whatever we need to make the space to bring in lighter and brighter, and then to honour at the full moon and feel gratitude for what we have received. So it's a very powerful thing working with those moon cycles there. But on the whole, this week is one of recovery from the full moon, going in, finding all the messages that are coming up with the Pluto retrograde, with the Mercury retrograde in Gemini, and with that Scorpio full moon, all these things that have come up from under the surface, all these hidden messages, all these flashes of inspiration, all of these new ideas or way to change our ideas that have come up in the last week, to seek the message of that and then to let go of that by the weekend with the dark moon, so that we're fresh and clean to work with all of this new Gemini energy. So those are the horoscopes for this week, and I'll see you next week. So talking of the moon cycles, I actually have a short online course where you can learn how to do this for yourself. In fact, I have 2. One is very intuitive, where you can just find each new moon as it comes up per month, and there's ideas in the course of how to work with that, with herbs and crystals and the elements, and to ritualize it. So that's a nice, easy, intuitive course. And then there's a more difficult course for those that like to take on astrology with the calculations, but I guide you through step by step on how to actually make a lunar planner for the whole year and understand exactly where these moons fall in your chart, so you're working on a much more specific level than just this is Scorpio or that's Taurus. You're actually working with where that falls in your chart and what immediate impact that has for you. So there's 2 courses there, and I'll put the links below. The news for this week is that I'm starting a meetup group on the middle Wednesday of each month. So the next one's coming up this Wednesday the 13th from 7 till 9 in Camden. And this is going to be like a monthly class where we have a look at the astrological energies around, how to work with them, work with a bit of astrology, work with a bit of tarot, maybe a theme of the month, and we all get to meet for 2 hours and just explore that together, with possibly meditation and herbs as well. So please do let me know if you're London based and you'd like to come along to a growing monthly group. It's going to be quiet to begin with, but it'd be really lovely to build a little community where we meet once a month and we explore the energies and we actually live astrology. But if you're not London based or not free on a Wednesday, then there's another option as well. I'm starting up a online membership group, and for a small subscription of £5 a month I'm going to be holding a closed Facebook page where I'll be setting topics and instigating interesting conversations, answering questions, and we can all have access to each other and actually have like a live online arena. And I plan to be physically available once a week for direct and immediate response as well, but the rest of the week that will just be a place where you can post up, and I'll be dropping in from time to time to add to, hopefully, and stimulate those conversations so that we can all learn and grow around the world. So that's a physical meetup group on the middle Wednesday of the month, first one on the 13th. And the subscription arena, which I'm really excited about because that opens things up all across the world and to people that have a shifting timetable. For a small fee we can all meet up and we can all share and we can all learn together, and I'll even be making special content for that site. So please do let me know if you're interested in any of those, because it would be lovely to just meet all of you a bit more personal, actually engage in some conversation and learn and grow together. So that's the news for this week. There's also a herbal workshop on Friday the 15th, because Taurus is the month of plants and planets, so it's a wonderful time to learn how to make all of your own product. So whoever comes to that workshop gets to decide what it is that we'll be making, but we should be able to cover quite a range, and that's Friday the 15th in Camden again from 7 till 9. So lots going on this month. If you're interested in any readings or any of my courses, as usual, please do get in contact with me. This is something that you can learn to do for yourself or gift as a present to someone in your world. So that's the news for this week. Have a wonderful week. Go deep, work with that Mercury energy, have a look at your mind, your thoughts, your memories, how they are or aren't serving you, and what you can do to make those alterations to make yourself a better world.